Welcome to the channel. Today, we're exploring some unbelievable story. Stay tuned and let's dive in. The cold of fall clung in the air as the sun fell below the horizon, culling the heavens in orange and purple. Michael Carter stood on the front porch of his modest house, looking absently at the passing automobiles. It was a quiet area, with children's laughing and the distant hum of lawnmowers providing a soothing background. Nathan's thinking, however, was everything from tranquil to night. Thoughts swirled, echoing the tempest forming within him. Nathan had always been precise, which suited him well as a systems analyst at Fusion Dynamics. His profession required accuracy, problem-solving abilities, and the capacity to predict future obstacles, all of which he valued highly. But recently, his personal life had unraveled in ways he couldn't control. The pressure on his marriage with Sophia, his wife of 6 years, had become evident. What had once been a solid relationship was crumbling around the edges. The first signals of danger appeared subtly: a shift in Sophia's tone during discussions, periods of silent anxiety, and inexplicable late-night absences. At first, Nathan rejected his doubts, attributing them to the demands of everyday living. But one fateful day, he came across a series of text conversations that left little question in his mind. They came from Daniel Evans, a guy Nathan had considered his best friend. The discovery of treachery slashed deeper than he could have expected. Nathan, determined to obtain information before facing Sophia, used his analytical skills. He installed tracking software and diligently recorded her movements. The proof was clear, and it sent him reeling. What he saw, Sophia spending lengthy hours at Jordan's house, seemed like a tragic twist of destiny. They had both deceived him, and the anguish drove Nathan into an emotional hole. Nathan battled to manage his emotions for many weeks. He found refuge in his profession, utilizing the demands of his career to distract himself from his personal problems. However, each time he returned to the home he lived with Sophia, the weight of the treachery weighed heavily on him. The routine, meals, small conversation, and shared places seemed empty. Nathan started to plot his escape, a means to leave behind the pain and establish a new life. On a breezy Sunday evening, Michael Carter maneuvered his vehicle into his suburban home's garage, bathed in a gentle golden glow from the departing sunshine. A guy with perfectly combed black hair emerged from the side entrance, juggling a laptop, a briefcase, and a well-worn duffel bag, evidence of a life filled with numerous work travels. The tranquil buzz of the neighborhood contrasted dramatically with the pandemonium brewing in his head, which he was resolved to address that night. Nathan entered his house without calling out to his wife, Sophia, since he knew she wasn't there. He moved his stuff into the living room and put his coat by the entrance. After removing his tie and unbuttoning his shirt, he dressed casually. He'd just returned from a Fusion Dynamics regional conference in Greenhaven, where his skills as a systems analyst was needed. Though he wasn't officially a manager, Nathan had assured Sophia that the trip would go over the weekend, partially to give himself time and avoid returning home too soon. He regretted not carrying more casual clothing; he had usually traveled in formal gear. After a brief shower, he ate supper and relaxed with a drink while reading the newspaper in his recliner. But, although seeming to be an average husband unwinding, he was only passing the time, dealing with unresolved anguish. He had spent a month digesting the phases of sorrow and hoped to make some progress that night. Around midnight, he started cleaning up, postponing the inevitable. Finally, he took a light jacket, entered the side entrance, and began his nighttime quest. Just before departing, he remembered to write an email and log onto his laptop one final time. With his strategy in place, he drove out of the garage and vanished into the darkness. The following morning, at 7:37 a.m., a lady called 911 after discovering a vehicle in Maplewood Park with its doors open, lights on, and blood all over it. She dashed to a payphone to report it, claiming no injuries but expressing terror of whomever could be involved. The operator promised her that assistance was on the way, but the lady refused to wait, hanging up before any other information could be obtained. Hours later, Detective Mark Daniels arrived at the Cooper home and met with Sophia, who was astonished to learn that Nathan's automobile had been recovered in the park. She claimed Nathan was at Greenhaven, but the police verified that the car's registration matched Nathan's. Sophia suspected the automobile had been stolen, but Brooks prodded her for further information. Sophia dialed Nathan's phone, but when the detective answered, her horror was palpable. The investigator stated that Nathan's phone had been discovered in his vehicle and was now considered evidence in a possible crime. Sophia's concern grew as Brooks recounted the scenario. Nathan's automobile had a gunshot hole and there was no trace of him in the park. Sophia contacted the motel in Greenhaven where Nathan normally stayed, and they verified he hadn't checked in. Her perplexity increased. Inside, she discovered Nathan's suitcase and laptop were still in the living area, complicating the investigation. The investigator requested a search warrant, emphasizing to Sophia that an unlawful search would not stand up in court. Sophia, still in denial, maintained Nathan was not engaged in any unlawful activities. But as the investigator prodded her for information, she started to dread the worst. Her dread grew when she realized she had no clue why Nathan had returned home early, and the thought of his being in danger struck her hard. Nathan could be hurt, she said. You have to find him. When Detective Mark Daniels saw Sophia was unhappy, he softened his tone. We don't know much yet, Mrs. Cooper, he told her. There is no evidence that your husband has done anything wrong. He recommended she brew coffee while he waited for his colleague to get a search warrant. Sophia calmed down little and began to prepare coffee. However, she stiffened up again when Brooks indicated that he would want statements from everyone involved. They sat at the kitchen table, sipping coffee, while Brooks described the crime scene: a vehicle discovered in the park with a gunshot hole, blood, and evidence of a fight. The vehicle had been towed for evidence gathering, and forensic investigators were still investigating. Within an hour, Detective Thomas Wright came with the search warrant, and forensic specialists started investigating the home, garage, and vehicle. Brooks obtained DNA samples from Nathan's toothbrush and razor to match with the blood discovered at the site. Sophia grew so concerned that Brooks made her sit in the living room while the search was ongoing. Following the search, the investigators removed just Nathan's briefcase and laptop, which were password secured. Brooks asked Sophia if she knew the password, and she offered a plausible one, but none of them worked. We'll have our technician handle it, he reassured her. Brooks then asked Sophia for a comment about her weekend. She described her Saturday routine chores: a call for Nathan at 1:30 p.m., shopping, supper, and a night at a friend's place. Sophia was noticeably anxious toward the conclusion of her tale, while Brooks recorded the specifics. He added that they could require further information later. He also requested updated images of Nathan for identification reasons. Sophia gave him a picture book, and Brooks chose 2 excellent photos of Nathan. When Nathan recognized a guy in one of the images, Sophia clarified that it was Nathan's closest friend, Daniel Evans, and not a relative. Later, Brooks joined the forensic team in the garage. While investigating Sophia's vehicle, they noticed bloodstains on the gas and brake pedals. The blood was recognized as human, and the vehicle was towed for further investigation. Brooks conveyed his suspicions to his colleague, David Price, regarding Sophia's probable participation, particularly given the unusual blood in the vehicle. The investigators returned to the residence and informed Sophia about the blood. She was stunned and denied any knowledge of it, stating she had not been near the park. She turned in her shoes for testing. Brooks was still dubious about Sophia's participation in the issue when the detectives departed. Do you think she's innocent or just a good actress? Asked Price. Brooks was unsure. They decided to look into the pair further, speaking with acquaintances, neighbors, and anybody else who may know why Nathan returned home early. Brooks felt this would be the key to solving the case. The investigators came early the following morning, anxious to make headway in the Michael Carter investigation. They were presented with a stack of forensic and medical examiner reports, which they spent the next hour studying. After completing, they understood that additional reports would be pouring in. Brooks gave a quick check and stated, "These reports seem to point in the same direction, but we shouldn't rush. Let's see if the computer techs find anything else." He concurred, "I think you're right. In the meantime, we can talk to his lawyer and colleagues. We're not ready to arrest yet, but we need some formal statements before approaching the DA." The investigators arrived at Michael Carter's lawyer's office about 9 a.m. Lawyer James Carter swiftly certified that the emails retrieved from Nathan's PC were authentic. After thanking him, the detectives departed and headed to Fusion Dynamics, where they met Nathan's employer. Price inquired, "Will Nathan be staying in Greenhaven until Friday night? Did he have lectures this weekend?" The supervisor answered that Nathan was scheduled to return Friday night. When questioned whether Nathan had been odd recently, he said that Nathan had been more gloomy but had insisted everything was great. Following the meeting, the detectives returned to the station. By late morning, they had obtained early DNA findings and discovered an unusual box with wires and a forensic report. The new knowledge, together with maps from the texts, let them fill in certain gaps. They spent a few hours in an interrogation room trying to piece together everything. By the afternoon, the investigators felt prepared to interrogate Sophia Cooper. They came to her residence unexpectedly, expecting to catch her off guard. Sophia answered the door and inquired whether they had located her husband. Detective Brooks said, "No, but we've made progress and need to ask you some questions." Sophia beckoned them inside and they sat down. Price opened his notes and said, "Is there anything you want to tell us about your relationship with Daniel Evans?" Sophia became pallid. "Jordan's just Nathan's best friend," she answered, visibly shaken. Brooks said, "Are you having an affair with him?" Sophia denied it, but her response indicated otherwise. The cops stood up, and Price continued, "We need you to come to the station for a formal statement." Sophia worried, "Am I under arrest?" Brooks reassured her, "You're not under arrest, but we have reason to believe you haven't been truthful with us." Sophia consented to accompany them to the station and directed them to their vehicle. After a quiet drive, they led her into an interrogation room that they had purposefully designed to be drab and unpleasant. Brooks said, "Are you sure you don't want a lawyer?" Sophia shook her head, sitting sadly. The crew put up the cameras and Price told them to make sure both cameras were recording, expecting that this might be a turning moment in the case. Meanwhile, across town, a Crime Stoppers volunteer responded to a call promising up to $1,000 for information leading to a solved crime. The case was progressing, but it was about to take an unexpected turn. The Crime Stoppers volunteer paused until an elderly guy stood forward, saying, "Is this where I can get money for helping the police?" The volunteer replied, "It depends on the information and how much it helps. Do you have details about a crime?" After a pause, the guy said, "So I don't get money now? What if the cops try to scam me?" The volunteer reassured him, "We just need to confirm you helped. The money isn't from the police, so they won't trick you. If you tell me what you know, I'll give you a number to call back in a few days to see if it helped." The guy became agitated. "I need the money now." The volunteer said, "If you're hungry, I can give you shelter addresses, but I can't help with cash right now." "I don't need food, I need juice, grape juice," he said, smiling. "If your information is correct, you might be able to afford all the juice you want," the volunteer said. The individual followed up with a tip, "I saw a guy toss a Colt and 2 shovels into the river under the Pinecrest Bridge on a Sunday morning. He had a rifle and I thought he'd shoot me." The volunteer took notes and inquired, "Was this by the East Side parking lot?" "Yeah," the guy said. "He tossed them from the dock. Shouldn't be hard to find." The guy was big with blonde hair and his car was dark blue. "The plate started with AS, but I forgot the rest." The volunteer thanked him, gave him a tip number, and promised him that if the information was useful, he would be compensated within an hour. By mid-afternoon, a police diver had retrieved the Colt and shovels from the river. The goods were in the crime lab, and the Colt's ammo corresponded to a recent shooting in Maplewood Park. The laboratory technician quickly notified the investigators, who started scrutinizing the results. Detective Brooks advised they break up. Price would interview Sophia Cooper, and Brooks would call in Daniel Evans. Sophia sat patiently when Price entered the interview room. He reminded her that the room was being videotaped and then inquired directly, "Are you having an affair with Daniel Evans?" Sophia paused before answering, "Yes." Price pushed evidence across the table, including emails and maps from her husband's laptop that showed he was aware of the affair. Sophia was shocked and said, "How did Nathan know? How could he track me?" Price said, "He even planned to confront you and Jordan, but he never made it there." Sophia's eyes widened. "But Nathan never showed up. I was with Jordan all night." Price provided further evidence. Blood on her shoes and in her vehicle matched Nathan's. He added that DNA testing verified Nathan's blood was discovered in the park, and a Colt associated with Daniel Evans was retrieved. Sophia disputed everything, saying Jordan was innocent. "We had nothing to do with it," she said. She was told by Price, "One of you will have to tell us where Nathan's body is. If you help, we'll consider it during sentencing." Sophia broke down. "Nathan isn't dead. I love him. She stuck to her narrative, insisting that if Nathan was wounded, it wasn't their fault. Sophia Evans buried her face in her hands, crying and holding a drenched handkerchief. Detective Price gave her a few seconds to collect herself before presenting further evidence. When she seemed relaxed, he stated, "The medical examiner confirmed your husband's end of life based on the blood loss and the lack of treatment. There's over a 95% chance he's dead." He gave her the report and images from the crime site. The horrible scene made her weep more. Price took the documents and walked away, telling her, "You're not helping yourself by refusing to take responsibility." Meanwhile, Detective Brooks drove to Daniel Evans' residence, arriving just as the backup police vehicle approached. Jordan opened the door and agreed to go to the police for interrogation. When Jordan arrived at the police, he denied having an affair with Sophia Cooper but later acknowledged it after being faced with emails and surveillance reports. He denied participation in Michael Carter's abduction, implying Nathan may have orchestrated his own death to implicate them. Brooks was doubtful. "We have the Colt used and a witness identified you in your car. Don't invent stories." Jordan grew upset, revealing that he had been terrified of Nathan since high school and had avoided interacting with his girlfriends. Despite this, he acknowledged to having an affair with Sophia, stating it had developed gradually. Brooks persisted, questioning whether things had gone out of control following Nathan's death. Jordan denied knowing what transpired, insisting that he and Sophia had not planned it. "I don't believe Nathan organized his own homicide," Jordan asserted. "He had a lawyer for a divorce, so why would he do that?" He responded, "We have enough to get a search warrant for your home, car, and office. I suggest you come clean now before it's too late. If you tell us what happened, you might get leniency." Jordan declined, arguing Sophia could have organized it on her own. As Brooks went, he informed Jordan, when two criminals work together, one always tries to blame the other. The investigators briefed the district attorney, providing enough circumstantial evidence to file charges even without a corpse. Sophia and Jordan were arrested within an hour after Nathan's death. They maintained their innocence while their Miranda rights were read, knowing that their fate now lay with the prosecution. Sophia and Jordan were transported to the police for fingerprints and photographs after their arraignment. Jordan frowned the whole time, and Sophia's cheeks were smeared with tears. When they returned to their cells, they finally talked. "What are we going to do, Jordan? They can't believe we did this to Nathan, right?" Sophia said, her voice filled with despair. Jordan responded with composure, "We'll need our own lawyers, unless you want to share one with me. Might save some money since we're both accused of the same thing." Sophia shakes her head. "This whole thing is messed up. I'm sure Nathan set us up somehow. Maybe even paid someone to film it and leave clues for the cops." Jordan was astonished. "You really think he would go that far?" Sophia frowned. "Why wouldn't he? I know Nathan. If I thought he'd find out about us, I wouldn't have even touched you." She broke down again, but Jordan said, "But he wasn't violent. Not like this." Sophia brushed away tears. "I don't know how or when he found out. He didn't act any different when we met. It was always quiet, secret. Maybe he planned it all." She sniffed. "Even if he's not dead, he's still going to want a divorce." Jordan was blunt. "You had to know it was going to end badly the first time you came over to my place." Sophia halted him, her voice soft. "You're right. I just hope he can forgive me." After a pause, she added, "Let's call Edward Hughes, our attorney, to share costs." She was led to a secluded room to make her call. Carter, Nathan's attorney, was unable to defend them but suggested a colleague, James Bennett, an accomplished criminal lawyer. Sophia agreed, and Morgan went on his way. When James Bennett arrived, he went right to work. After examining the allegations, he asked them to describe what had occurred. Sophia sobbed, "I had nothing to do with what happened in that park. I love Nathan. I couldn't hurt him." Morgan turned to face Jordan. "Your turn." Jordan stayed calm. "We had nothing to do with Nathan's disappearance. I think he set us up. He paid someone to liquidate him and frame us." Morgan stopped to contemplate their remarks. "We'll focus on getting you out of here. The prosecution will likely set bail at $100,000 for each of you. Can you afford it?" Sophia was astonished. $800,000. Morgan informed her, "You only need 10%, $10,000 to post bail. The rest isn't required unless the judge orders it." He continued, "You'll be arraigned tomorrow. You'll spend the night here, but you'll be able to arrange bail in the morning." That night, both were unable to sleep because of their boisterous cellmates and greasy takeaway meals. Their court hearing the next morning went well. Both pleaded not guilty and the bond was set at $100,000. Jordan was able to pay his $10,000 bail fast and was freed that afternoon. Sophia, however, discovered that her savings account was empty. Desperate, she phoned her parents, who grudgingly consented to assist after considerable convincing. It took longer than intended, and Sophia spent another night in prison. Her new cellmates, two inebriated ladies, kept her up the most of the night. Sophia was ultimately freed at noon the following day, after getting the monies, and returned to her vacant home. She washed, climbed into bed, and ignored her phone, allowing the answering machine to handle the calls. Sophia and Jordan's month passed quickly. Sophia quickly discovered that her husband Nathan had withdrew money from their shared bank account before vanishing. Nathan wrote his lawyer, Edward Hughes, around 10 days before his disappearance, stating that he was taking the money to prevent Sophia from collecting his legal share in the impending divorce. There was no word of what happened to the money, although Nathan had promised to give up his half if a divorce settlement was finalized. Sophia and Jordan had frequent meetings with their attorney, James Bennett. He had met with the district attorney and evaluated the material, assuming that the absence of a corpse and witnesses would make it difficult to prosecute. After obtaining their release, Morgan proposed hiring a private investigator to investigate if Nathan orchestrated his own abduction. Sophia didn't buy it, believing Nathan may have been the victim of a bungled carjacking. Despite her reservations, she was unable to believe that Nathan may be dead. The private investigator found little. Morgan also instructed the investigator to follow up on a tip from a winery who claimed finding abandoned murder weapons. The investigator was unable to locate the informant and discovered no valuable information. Sophia and Jordan were becoming more tense, despite Morgan's lack of direct reference. Jordan offered they meet freely now that Nathan had been released, but Sophia rejected him emotionally, blaming him for destroying everything. Jordan answered coldly and their relationship deteriorated totally. Morgan scheduled a meeting with District Attorney David Cole about a month later, seeking to get the charges dismissed. Sophia and Jordan were overwhelmed by friends' concerns and wanted the issue resolved so they could move on. Grant, dressed casually and looked youthful for a district attorney, stunned them by proposing a plea deal 8 to 12 years for second-degree murder. Sophia and Jordan were shocked and denied any participation. Morgan questioned Grant about the evidence and the DA shared additional DNA discoveries. Nathan's blood was discovered on Jordan's vehicle and a piece of plastic at the murder site matched materials from Jordan's landscaping company. Sophia was upset and blamed Jordan, but he denied it, stating she was with him when it occurred. Morgan interjected, telling everyone to be calm. Grant went on to say that they had enough evidence for the trial, including the fact that Nathan had been shot and taken inside Jordan's vehicle before being buried. DNA from both defendants was discovered at the site, and witnesses saw Jordan dispose of evidence. Despite the alarming findings, Sophia and Jordan both turned down the plea agreement, believing they could fight the allegations in court. Morgan left them with a lot of work to do as they prepared for trial. After they departed, he examined the evidence, wondering whether either client was telling the truth. Several months later, the study started. Judge Anderson brought the court to order, and James Bennett sat between Sophia and Jordan, attempting to calm the tension between them. District Attorney David Cole's opening remarks was forthright. He said that, although Nathan's corpse remained gone, the evidence pointed to Sophia and Jordan as the offenders. According to emails, Nathan discovered their affair and was planning for divorce. Grant said that Nathan had most likely been shot during an encounter at Jordan's residence and then disposed of in a rural park. Forensic evidence, including blood on Jordan's vehicle and materials associated with the crime discovered by Crime Stoppers, tied both defendants to the scene. Sophia lost her cool, and Morgan had to soothe her before Grant finished. The DA said Sophia's blood was discovered in her vehicle, hinting she was complicit in the crime. He anticipated that their defense would be self-serving testimony, with each defendant accusing the other. Grant's comments established a somber tone for the trial. Morgan's argument was feeble. He reminded the jury that they were innocent until proved guilty, but it was evident that Grant's opening statement had a significant influence, leaving the defense with a difficult path ahead. The first witness, a computer specialist, said that he discovered emails and maps documenting Sophia Cooper's encounters with Dan Evans. Nathan had used a gadget to plan the route and timing of her appointments. One reporter mentioned Summit surveillance, assuming it would attract future customers. Jordan seemed uninterested during the hearing, while Sophia appeared ashamed. Morgan was unable to refute the tracking evidence, and the hearing was adjourned for lunch. The afternoon included testimonials from emergency personnel and patrol policemen who reported finding Nathan's automobile. When investigators and the medical examiner testified, images of gunshot holes, blood, and drag marks revealed the grisly details of the crime scene. The medical examiner found that Nathan had lost 3 to 4 pints of blood, and evidence of a severed main artery indicated that he was dying when relocated. Sophia yelled, "No! Nathan can't be dead," and was dismissed for the day owing to her emotional outburst. The second day started with a short continuation of the medical examiner's testimony, which centered on blood sample testing. Morgan cross-examined him, implying that Nathan may have survived with quick medical attention, which the doctor acknowledged was feasible, but improbable. A forensic expert then discussed bullets seized at the site, classifying them as military-grade full metal jacket rounds. Morgan questioned whether they had penetrated bone or tissue, but the technician discovered minimal residue on the rounds. The Colt used in the shooting was untraceable, but no fingerprints or DNA tied the defendants to it, providing a little triumph for the defense. The forensic team also reviewed 2 shovels discovered with Jordan's landscaping logo, which confirmed no fingerprints or DNA but suggested a strong connection to Jordan. Cross-examination of the blood discovered in Jordan's automobile showed that it had been planted by a third party, which the technician conceded was plausible. However, the blood discovered in Sophia's automobile and on her shoe was more difficult to ignore, even if Morgan attempted to cast doubt on whether it was transferred. By the conclusion of the day, the prosecution's case seemed solid. The press predicted that the defense would struggle, particularly given the accumulating evidence against Sophia and Jordan. Morgan looked to be intent on casting doubt on Nathan's end of life, trying to generate enough confusion for the jury to question the prosecution's evidence. The defense's first witness was Dr. Wilbur, a blood analysis specialist. When questioned about the medical examiner's testimony, he indicated that blood evidence might have been obtained more correctly and that as little as 1.5 quarts of blood may have caused the scene. He also verified that a person who lost that much blood might still be alive. The prosecution did not cross-examine him. Daniel Evans was the following witness. He claimed he was innocent and said Nathan had planned his own murder. He also denied possessing a Colt and said that the shovel seen in the river may have been stolen from his employer. When cross-examined, Jordan detailed a previous fight with Nathan but was unable to explain why Nathan would have arranged his own murder. The prosecution claimed that Jordan was a narcissist, which Jordan clearly disliked. Morgan protested, and the judge urged the jury to dismiss his statement. Sophia Cooper then took the stand. She denied being involved in her husband's death, stating she loved him and speculating that he may have been carjacked. However, when questioned by the prosecution about her movements from midnight Sunday until Sunday afternoon, she clumsily revealed her time with Jordan, including personal moments, which embarrassed her. The prosecution then utilized her confessions to refute her claim of loving her spouse, claiming that her actions contradicted this. Sophia felt tearful, so the court finished her evidence in private. Morgan voiced anxiety about the trial's result, noting that both clients struggled on the stand. The defense rested before moving on to closing arguments. The prosecution underlined the defendant's inability to provide convincing answers, while the defense emphasized the case's circumstantial nature. Nathan's corpse was missing, and he may still be alive. The jury started deliberations at 4 p.m. and rendered their judgment the next day. Sophia and Jordan waited eagerly in Morgan's office. At 3:30 p.m., they discovered that the jury had convicted them of second-degree murder. Sophia sobbed, and Jordan smashed his fist on the table. They were handcuffed and brought into jail. Sophia talked briefly with her parents and expressed her innocence before being escorted away. They were told that they would be sentenced in a week, and the day ended on a gloomy tone. The week between conviction and sentence went rather swiftly. Sophia's parents paid frequent visits, however Jordan, who had no surviving relatives, had just one visit from a cousin. Time seemed to crawl for him, and he saw how dark his future seemed. Sophia, still in denial, refused to address her future when her parents broached the subject. The sentence hearing was quick. Both received sentences ranging from 15 years to life. James Bennett, the defense attorney, expressed compassion and pledged to study the matter for potential appeal. Things progressed quickly following the sentence. Sophia and Jordan were transported to state jails in under 3 days. Sophia was sent to a reputable women's institution, but Jordan was placed to a jail with a history of riots. The media soon lost interest, and other topics took over the news cycle. 2 months later, James Bennett and District Attorney David Cole went for a drink. Morgan said, "You really went after them," alluding to their hard-fought case. Grant said, "I was surprised by the conviction. They never wavered, but the jury didn't buy their story. I try not to take these cases personally." Morgan thought, "I guess you're right, but this one still bothers me." A year later, a news piece drew James Bennett's attention. Daniel Evans had been stabbed during a jail riot, leaving him in severe condition. It made Morgan reconsider the argument. Sophia and Jordan had been convicted 18 months before. Morgan analyzed the matter many times but found no legal basis for an appeal. One calm Thursday morning, an Innocence Project receptionist received a delivery. The contents included a DVD, a sealed black bag with a biohazard label, and a multi-page letter. As she read the message, her emotions changed. After completing, she contacted Andrew Clark and said, "We just got a package that I think the team should see. It involves several homicide convictions that may need to be overturned." A minute later, a tall red-haired young guy in a white shirt and faded jeans appeared from one of the offices. He thanked the receptionist, collected the item, and exited through the door. The young guy was Andrew Clark, a recent law school graduate. Before seeking a high-paying position at a Wall Street business, he wanted to help the public. He had been at the Innocence Project for about a year, largely doing legal research for the senior lawyers. He didn't want to remain long, but he liked making a difference for people unfairly condemned. Tony sat back in his swivel chair and put the package contents on his desk. After a brief look at the DVD and sealed package, he started reading the letter slowly. He began reading while leaning back in his chair, his Nike shoes pushed up on the corner of his desk. The message was written neatly on a computer in an easy-to-read style, and Tony rapidly got absorbed in its contents. The Innocence Project, New York. My name isn't important, but the information I've been asked to share with you could have a significant impact on the lives of the 2 men who were wrongfully convicted, as well as the futures of 5 other people, one of whom is me. I'm not sure where to begin when it comes to the convictions for the homicides of Sophia Davis and Daniel Evans, so I'll start from the beginning. To begin, nearly 15 months ago, a man walked in off the street in response to an ad I placed in the local paper. I was looking for someone with computer skills to help me run my small IT services company, and after a short interview, it was clear that he knew just as much about computers and business networks as I did. Since then, I've learned that he knows even more, and I hired him on the spot. Nathan, as I'll call him in this letter, was probably the quietest person I'd met in a long time. His silence didn't affect his work, which he did exceptionally well. In fact, within 2 months, my business grew by at least 50% thanks to his efforts, advice, and the long hours he insisted on working. When he started, Nathan mentioned that he was new to town and hadn't found a place to rent yet. I knew renting the room to Nathan was a gamble, but there was something about him that made me feel safe. We fell into a routine that continues today, though the dynamics have shifted over time. Nathan spent the first few months living in the basement, though he ate with us and commuted to and from work with us. Initially, he frequently returned to the office after hours, working without asking for extra pay. He told me that he preferred being productive rather than wasting. Nathan's quietness and tendency to zone out into deep thought about things I couldn't understand led to a confrontation between us. Over time, our relationship evolved from a professional one to a friendship, and eventually to something much deeper, a loving family bond. My son now refers to him as Dad, and it feels genuine in every way. I locked the door and called him into my office one afternoon when the office was quiet. I was determined to figure out what was bothering him, as I had begun to realize how deeply my feelings for him had developed. After some coaxing, he finally opened up. He explained that he was running from a broken marriage that had shattered him. His wife had cheated on him with a close friend, and he had been so devastated that he nearly resorted to homicide and self-destruction. We spent the rest of the day talking, sharing our experiences with unfaithful spouses. My husband left me for another woman, and Nathan left his wife because of her affair. We had common ground, and it seemed that talking it out helped him move on from a painful chapter in his life. That conversation also marked the beginning of our deeper connection. We began seeing each other on weekends, maintaining our professional relationship during the week, and becoming romantically. I know I love him, and I believe he loves both me and my son. In fact, I should say our son, because that's how Nathan feels about him. Our son is about to turn 4, and he deserves a father's love, which his biological father has completely failed to provide. He hasn't seen his biological father in years. This brings us to 4 days ago, when Nathan collapsed at work. After 3 days in the ICU, doctors determined that his condition was heart-related and that he would require open-heart surgery to correct an issue he had most likely been born with. Once his condition stabilized, they moved him to a private room, and we were finally able to speak. When I walked into his room, I could tell something was seriously bothering him. That's when he shared a story with me that he had been afraid would die with him if he didn't have the surgery he needed to close that chapter of his life for good. He told me a story throughout the day, and when I promised to write it down and ensure it reached you, it seemed like a huge weight lifted off his shoulders. Now he's asleep, and I'm typing this on my laptop while. Nathan's story, which I now consider to be my husband's story, began nearly 2 years ago. At the time, he was happily married to Sophia, and their marriage was approaching its 6th year. One night, for reasons he couldn't explain, he noticed a small bruise on the side of her right bosom. Initially, he thought it might have been caused by an accidental bump against furniture, either at home or at her part-time job as a secretary, but as he lay awake, Later that day, the manager from the parts department dropped by his office with a new tracking device for a trial run. The manager asked Nathan to evaluate it and provide feedback, and he quickly decided how he would test it. 3 days later, after installing the device in his wife's car, Nathan decided to check the monitor program to see if it was working. She had told him she was going shopping. When Nathan confronted her the next day, she insisted she had been at Jordan's house for the entire time. Nathan, who was out of town on business, told me that he felt physically sick but decided not to jump to conclusions just yet. He decided to keep an eye on her for a week and track her car through 3 states. When Nathan returned from his trip, he was consumed by thoughts of revenge. He knew Jordan was a notorious ladies' man, but he never imagined his friend would go after his wife. That night, he went to the elderly widow next door under the pretense of borrowing a wrench from her late husband's toolbox. Nathan knew that the old man had hidden a revolver at the bottom of the toolbox, which he had shown Nathan in the past. Instead of taking the wrench, Nathan grabbed the. Nathan ordered a new tracking device for himself so he could return the one he borrowed. He explained to me that he intended to use it to eliminate both Sophia and Jordan, then end his own life, but he decided to wait until the next time they met while he was in town to keep an eye on his wife's movements. Fortunately, Sophia and Jordan did not meet for another week, or my son and I would not have had the pleasure of seeing Nathan again. Nathan devised a new plan to frame Sophia and Jordan for homicide. He spent a week coming up with the details and another week gathering what he needed to make it happen. Once everything was in place, he left for a business trip, confident that Sophia and Jordan would meet while he was away. When Sophia confirmed that she was going to Jordan's house, Nathan put his plan into action. Before leaving, he used the neighbor's revolver to shoot into the passenger seat of his own car and into a wooden block he had set up. He claimed the sound was muffled by an old blanket in the closed garage, but pulling the trigger gave him. Nathan urged me to look for archived newspaper stories online and to get a copy of the court transcripts. He watched the trial every day online and said that the court reporters had captured the whole process. As Nathan began recounting his actions, the sequence of events seemed like one continuous story. He didn't want to interrupt, so some details might slip through the cracks in his retelling. He also recommended that I gather all of the documents together. He believed that would help clarify things. Nathan had parked his car in a quiet corner of a park near Jordan's house to prepare for the next phase of his plan. He unpacked a large gym bag filled with the items he had gained. First, he set up firewood, plastic sheeting, and a spare tire, arranging them on the plastic to create a clear drag trail leading out to the paved road. After stashing the tire back in the trunk, he scattered the firewood around the picnic area and removed the plastic. Using a small flashlight, he worked silently, careful not to draw attention, and then sat quietly, waiting to see if anyone showed up. Nathan inserted a needle into his left hand as he sat there to draw blood. He explained that he had managed to buy everything he needed at a medical supply store by claiming he was taking care of his elderly mother. Using a makeshift plastic bag, he collected almost 2 pints of blood, worried about the blood clotting before he could dilute it with distilled water. It took over an hour to collect the blood, most of which he mixed with water. Nathan said, "I hope I'm getting everything right," his voice calm but exhausted. "I don't really want to wake him asleep to double-check. He has to relax for his operation tomorrow." He stopped, carefully picking his next words. "I hope everything goes well and he makes it through. Even if I don't have everything perfect." Nathan explained that he had taken photographs of his actions before and after shots on his digital camera. There were even pictures of him drawing his own blood. Nathan said he hadn't seen them himself, but had given me a password to access the files on their work server. He called them his souvenirs, noting that despite the dim lighting, the pictures had turned out surprisingly well. Nathan packed his gym bag and left after finishing the blood and car in the park. He had previously purchased an old car for this purpose and made his way to it. Despite feeling lightheaded from blood loss, Nathan admitted he nearly passed out and had to rest in the car until almost 6 a.m. before heading to Jordan's house to finish what he had started. "That was a real stroke of luck," he said, as he managed to squeeze a few drops of blood onto the gas pedal. When he moved to Jordan's car, he noticed a light on in Jordan's bedroom, causing a brief surge of panic. "I thought they might have seen me," he explained. After quickly smearing blood on Jordan's car, Nathan sped off, heading for a payphone on the opposite side of the park at sunrise. He used the payphone to call emergency, reporting a car in the park. To disguise his voice, he used a professional voice changer device he had purchased from a spy store in Greenhaven. It worked well, he said, explaining that he was able to adjust the tone and pitch of his voice enough to make it sound like a woman's. After that, he proceeded to a riverside wharf and threw 2 shovels and a pistol into the water. "By the time I finished everything, I was completely drained," he claimed. "Up until then, I felt a surge of energy from realizing that everything was going according to plan." He hired a room at a nearby hotel to relax and recuperate for 2 days, taking vitamins and eating energy bars. "I'm a bit foggy on the date," he said, "but at some point, I utilized the voice changer and made another call. This time, I claimed to be an elderly man to assist the police in locating the handgun I had abandoned." Nathan hesitated and continued, "I'll read this to him in the morning and correct any errors. I absolutely hope that seeing things set to travel would bring him comfort." Nathan explained that he wanted me to send this to you because he wants to sever all ties to his past life as Michael Carter. He had assumed his current identity before coming into our lives, and he never wants to be Michael Carter again. Please do whatever you can to help overturn Sophia and Jordan's convictions. Tomorrow, I intend to pick up a copy of the Daily Tribune and an inkwell made from a portion of the front page. I'll firmly press Nathan's fingerprints into the paper and use a needle to make a massive blood stain. When compared to DNA from the park, it will show Nathan is still alive. That should be enough to get them out of jail, he said. The letter stopped there, but there was a handwritten note at the bottom that said, "Nathan did well after surgery. He wants me to travel to Seattle tomorrow and deliver the box. I hate to leave him, but I'm certain he'll feel better after this is received. I told you this would affect 5 of us, but I'm not sure I articulated what I meant." He and Nathan were expecting twins in 3 months. Andrew Clark turned the page, looking for any additional notes, but it was blank. He looked at the other items in the package. The DVD was labeled "Photos Taken in Maplewood Park," and the envelope was labeled "Fingerprints and DNA." After reviewing everything, he called one of the senior attorneys. This was too big for him to handle alone. The state attorney general and governor expedited the release of Sophia and Jordan, who had been wrongfully convicted of a homicide that had never occurred. It didn't take long to determine that Michael Carter's DNA was found in his car in the park, and his fingerprints confirmed his existence. A week later, Sophia and Jordan were back in court, facing a new reality. The state attorney general issued an apology to the court system, acknowledging the errors and stating that the blame lay squarely with Michael Carter. While the judicial system had worked, it had been derailed by his determined actions. He also made it clear that their department would spare no effort in tracking down Michael Carter and holding him accountable for the costs incurred by. When a reporter inquired whether they knew where Michael Carter was, the attorney merely shook his head. Chris Reynolds appeared to have undergone a change. No longer the arrogant man he once was, he appeared to be more willing to compromise. He apologized to Sophia for starting the chain of events that led to their incarceration. Sophia, on the other hand, seemed indifferent, accepting the check for their compensation as if it were a trivial matter. "I think we deserve this," she said, slipping the check into her purse. "But I lost Nathan forever." 2 weeks after a cable news broadcast on Sophia and Jordan's release, a huge mail came in James Bennett's office, containing a brief message and a sealed letter addressed to Sophia Davis, which Morgan scheduled to deliver to her at precisely 5 p.m. that evening. When Morgan arrived at Sophia's apartment, they exchanged a few brief words before he left her standing at the door, holding the envelope. Sophia hesitated for a moment before taking it into the kitchen and opening it. The familiar handwriting inside revealed a letter from Nathan, which she couldn't resist reading. "Sophia, I want to apologize for the time you spent in jail. I've never been vengeful, but your betrayal, along with Jordan's, nearly broke me. My new life has shown me that I had to free you both in order to move on. I know the authorities will be looking for me, but I'm confident in my new life with my new family. Goodbye and good luck. N." The letter slid from Sophia's hands and fluttered to the floor, putting an end to any possibility of reconciling with Nathan. Sophia and Jordan spent the months after their release adapting to life outside jail, each dealing with the consequences of Nathan's intricate deceit. Sophia went to her family, attempting to reassemble the pieces of her life, but she was tormented by the letter Nathan had left her. His new life, unaffected by the havoc he had manufactured, looked like a cruel parody of her suffering. Jordan, on the other hand, vanished from public view. Rumors circulated that he had moved out of state, distancing himself from the community that had once labeled him as a butcher. Some speculated that he sought redemption, while others believed he simply wanted to escape Michael Carter's shadow. In the meantime, Nathan, or the man he had become, lived quietly with his new family, cherishing the life he had rebuilt from the ashes of his past. His actions had forever altered the lives of those he left behind, but to him, the sacrifices were necessary for his freedom and peace of mind. As the years passed, the story faded from headlines, leaving only whispers in the corners of Ridgewood. For Sophia, Jordan, and Nathan, the scars remained, a silent reminder of how love. Thanks for watching. What do you think? Can someone genuinely leave their past? Let us know in the comments below, and remember to like and subscribe for more content.